Hello, Dreadites. 3 miles outside of Millbrook, Arizona, police found 300 bodies arranged in perfect rows. Each person held a red plastic cup. Each face wore the same peaceful smile. The cups contained traces of cyanide masked by almond tea. That was 847 days ago. But this isn't the story of how we died in Paradise Valley Sanctuary. This is the story of what happened after, when we realized our prophet wasn't what he seemed, and our salvation was just the beginning of an endless hunger. I'm one of the 300. My fingernail carved another mark into the underside of my desk. 847. The wood shavings sprinkled onto my shoes as footsteps echoed down the medical wing's hallway. Sister Sylvia. Sister Rebecca's voice trembled from my doorway. Blood dripped from her nose onto the collar of her white dress. It won't stop bleeding. The radio on my shelf clicked on, right on schedule, 6 a.m. The same hymn played as yesterday, as every morning. I grabbed gauze from my cabinet. Sit here, I said, patting the examination chair. Third nosebleed this week? Sister Rebecca's skin had gone waxy, pale, her eyes fixed on something beyond my shoulder as she said, "The mountains are closer today." I turned to my window. The peaks loomed through their eternal gray mist, no different from the day before. But something moved in those swirls of fog. Shapes. Faces, maybe. I keep hearing voices in the hymns, Sister Rebecca whispered. Her blood formed perfect patterns on her dress. They're saying things. Terrible things. I pressed my stethoscope to her chest. No heartbeat. Just like Brother James before quarantine. Just like Sister Mary. My hand shook as I pulled the stethoscope away. The door creaked open. Elder Gregory's shadow stretched into my office, writhing against the walls with too many limbs. Sister Rebecca, Prophet Daniel requests your presence in quarantine, he said, his face void of expression. Sister Rebecca stood without protest. Her blank eyes reflected a sky color that didn't exist. Elder Gregory, I started. The Lord provides healing through Prophet Daniel's guidance, Elder Gregory said. His shadow reached toward Sister Rebecca with dozens of twisted hands. You understand this, Sister Sylvia. The morning bells began to ring. Prophet Daniel's voice poured from hidden speakers, but something else spoke beneath his words. Other voices, older voices. Of course, I said. My tongue went numb at the familiar sweetness of deception. Sister Rebecca followed Elder Gregory out. Her footsteps hit the exact same spots on the floor as Brother James's had, as Sister Mary's had, as all the others had. My Stanford medical ID badge burned in my desk drawer. Dr. Sylvia Wright stared up at me from the photo, still believing in science, in reason. 847 days ago, that woman had died believing in salvation. The evening prayer bells rang. We filed into the main hall, our shadows stretching behind us. Only Prophet Daniel's shadow moved independently, dancing across the walls like smoke. His too wide smile gleamed as he raised his arms. My children, Prophet Daniel said in his many-layered voice, God has blessed us with another day in paradise. The congregation swayed in perfect unison. Their faces bore identical expressions of peace. Too identical, too perfect. The truth hit me like a physical blow as Prophet Daniel's shadow reached for us with its countless hands. We weren't survivors of any apocalypse. We were something else entirely. The storage room key burned cold in my palm. 8 years of dust coated the shelves, untouched since the previous medical caretaker. Marcus's questions about the dates echoed in my mind as I pushed the door open. Cardboard boxes filled the back corner. My flashlight beam caught yellowed newspaper edges, and my hands trembled as I pulled the first one free. The headline screamed about a local football game. The date read, October 31st, 3 weeks after our supposed apocalypse. A floorboard creaked behind me. The papers scattered across the floor. You found them. Ruth stood in the doorway, her fingers twisting the fabric of her blue dress. He missed these when he burned the others. I held up the newspaper with shaking hands. This date can't be right. The tribulation was October 10th. Look at the others. Ruth knelt beside me, spreading out paper after paper. Each one showed a world continuing on, oblivious to any apocalypse. The storage room temperature dropped. Ruth's breath fogged in the air as she spoke. Sister Mary asked about the dates too. Before quarantine, my fingers traced the newsprint. A child's laugh echoed through the window. We both rushed to look. Emily skipped rope in the courtyard, her blonde pigtails bouncing. As we watched, her face began to age. 20, 40, 80. Her hair went white, skin wrinkled, then snapped back to youth mid-skip. Ruth's nails dug into my arm. Did you? Yes. The word came out as a whisper. The compound speakers crackled. All members report to the main hall immediately. Prophet Daniel's voice carried new undertones, like multiple voices speaking at once. God has blessed us with a vision. Ruth's face drained of color. No, not another vision. What happens during these visions? Ask Sister Mary. Ruth backed toward the door. Ask Brother James. Ask anyone who... She stopped, eyes widening at something behind me. I turned. The shadows in the storage room had begun to move, flowing toward the door like water. We have to go. Ruth's voice shook. If we're late... The bells began to ring, but the sound was wrong. Metal screaming against metal. The walls vibrated with their force. All members report immediately. Prophet Daniel's voice repeated, the multiple tones more pronounced. Papers crinkled under my shirt as I shoved them there. Ruth had already disappeared into the hallway's shadows. I followed, passing the quarantine building on my way to the main hall. Through its high windows, Elder Gregory stood perfectly still. His shadow stretched up the wall behind him, but it wasn't human-shaped anymore. The edges rippled with appendages that shouldn't exist. The congregation sat in perfect rows as Prophet Daniel took the pulpit. His smile stretched too wide across his face. Row after row of teeth gleamed in the artificial light. My children. His voice resonated with impossible harmonies. God has shown me who among us harbors doubt. His ancient eyes found mine in the crowd. The papers crinkled against my skin as his shadow reached across the ceiling with countless hands. We weren't just trapped in hell. We'd invited its master to lead us here. Prophet Daniel's twisted smile triggered something in my mind. Red plastic cups appeared on fold-out tables, hundreds of them lined up in perfect rows. The memory hit with such force my knees buckled. Sister Sylvia seems unwell. Prophet Daniel's voice echoed with its strange harmonies. Perhaps she needs time in quarantine to strengthen her faith. The congregation turned to stare. Their pupils had grown too large, too dark. The memory pushed harder. The sweet scent of almond tea filled my nose, 847 days old, but fresh as morning. Ruth sat 3 rows ahead, her shoulders rigid. Blood dripped from Marcus's nose beside her, splashing onto his white shirt. His eyes met mine. He remembered too. The main hall doors burst open. Sister Mary stumbled in, her clothes caked with dirt and blood. Her eyes blazed with a terrible clarity. "I found it." Her voice cracked through Prophet Daniel's sermon. "Under quarantine, a bunker full of proof." The congregation didn't move, didn't blink. Sister Mary's hands shook as she held up a stack of papers. 847 days ago, Sister Mary's voice caught. Her skin began to change, graying at the edges. "We didn't survive anything. Prophet Daniel raised one hand. Sister Mary's flesh withered. Her eyes sank into her skull as decades passed in seconds. Her body crumbled to ash on the wooden floor. The congregation applauded in perfect unison. Another memory surfaced. Elder Gregory bursting through these same doors, desperation twisting his face. The red cups raised to hundreds of lips, his voice crying out too late. "Who else requires cleansing?" Prophet Daniel's question slithered through the air. No one moved, but I watched the truth spread across face after face. Ruth's fingers clawed bloody furrows in her palms. Marcus's nose gushed faster. Others shifted in their seats as memories leaked through the cracks of our shared delusion. The walls of the main hall rippled like living skin. Through gaps in the surface, I glimpsed the truth. Writhing shapes, twisted bodies, an endless darkness hungry for our denial. Prophet Daniel's shadow rose up the wall, sprouting limbs and mouths and eyes. The bells began to ring, but they weren't bells anymore. I recognized the sound now. Our own screams, preserved from that last day, played back in perfect clarity. My memory cleared completely, the sweet tea burning my throat. The room spun as poison took hold. Prophet Daniel watched us die with that same twisted smile. We weren't chosen ones. We were cattle, our willing blindness feeding something ancient and hungry. Our false prophet kept us in this pen of denial, feeding on our desperate need to believe we'd been saved instead of damned. The congregation's shadows twisted together, forming a dark ocean on the floor. And as Prophet Daniel opened his mouth to reveal row after row of impossible teeth, I understood at last. Paradise Valley wasn't our salvation. It was our prison feeding time. The morning after Sister Mary crumbled to dust, I found Ruth and Marcus huddled in my office. Dark circles ringed Marcus's eyes, dried blood crusted beneath his nose. The newspapers from the storage room lay scattered across my desk. They're choosing to forget. Marcus pressed his palm against the window glass. Below, a line of congregation members walked toward quarantine, their faces blank with artificial peace. They know the truth now, but they'd rather go back. A scream pierced the morning quiet. Sister Rebecca stood in the courtyard, one arm stretched toward the mountains. The peaks had crept closer overnight, their eternal gray mist forming faces, hundreds of them, twisted in eternal agony. "You see them too?" Sister Rebecca's voice shook. "In the mist they are—" Her words cut off as Elder Gregory appeared beside her. His shadow didn't match his movements anymore. It had separated entirely, wearing a different face than his own. "The truth comes whether we want it or not." Elder Gregory's voice carried up to my window. He pulled a leather-bound book from his coat. Dark stains marked its cover. Ruth pressed against the wall as Elder Gregory entered my office. "Is that blood on the book?" "Tea." Elder Gregory placed the book on my desk. 847 days old. The pages fell open to drawings, hundreds of them. Different compounds, different congregations, different versions of hell, all connected, all feeding into something bigger. We're not alone. Elder Gregory's face cracked with age, then snapped back to normal. Look. Through my window, Emily skipped rope in the courtyard again, but her rope writhed with living shadows, and her feet never touched the ground. Her song floated up to us, the notes twisted into impossible harmonies. Marcus flipped through the book's pages. These dates go back centuries, different names, but always the same story, always the same tea. The compound speakers crackled to life. Prophet Daniel's voice poured out, but English had abandoned him. The sounds belonged to no human tongue. Ruth clutched her ears as blood trickled from them. What's happening to the walls? The white paint rippled like skin, peeling back in places. Through the gaps, other compounds became visible, an endless maze of identical buildings stretched into infinity. In each one, another Prophet Daniel preached to another congregation of the damned. He's losing control. Elder Gregory's shadow wept dark tears. The walls between hells are thinning. Half our congregation marched toward quarantine, choosing to reset their memories rather than face the truth. Their faces showed perfect peace as the building's doors swallowed them. The ground shook beneath our feet. Through cracks in the false sky, massive shapes shifted in the void. Other Prophet Daniels, other versions of our tormentor, flowed together into something older than time. He's calling the others. Elder Gregory's voice trembled. All his forms, all his congregations, he's joining the hells together. The mountain faces screamed in chorus with the speakers. Reality tore like tissue paper, revealing the true scope of our situation. We weren't just trapped in a hell of our own making. Our denial, our willing blindness, our desperate need to believe in salvation, it all fed something vast and hungry. And after 847 days of fattening up on our delusions, it was ready to feast. The bunker door groaned open beneath quarantine. Elder Gregory's shadow led us down concrete steps, its edges rippling with impossible geometries. Ruth's flashlight beam caught rows of filing cabinets stretching into darkness. Every congregation. Elder Gregory pulled open a drawer. Every compound. Every version of Paradise Valley. My hands trembled as I lifted the first file. Newspaper clippings spilled across the metal desk. Different dates, different names, but always the same story. Always Prophet Daniel. Always the tea. October 10th wasn't special. Ruth's voice cracked as she read through another file. Just another harvest. Marcus stumbled against a cabinet. Blood poured from his nose as he pulled out a leather-bound ledger. These numbers, they're counting souls. The concrete walls rippled around us. Other bunkers became visible through the thinning reality. Countless rooms filled with countless files, the evidence of centuries of harvests. A child's voice drifted down the stairs. Emily's twisted song echoed through the bunker, but the words weren't English anymore. The sound made the filing cabinets rattle. He's coming. Elder Gregory's shadow stretched across the ceiling. All of him. The ground shook. Dust rained from above as Prophet Daniel's voice boomed through hidden speakers. The sound carried harmonies from 1,000 other compounds, 1,000 other hells joining into one. Ruth grabbed another file and said, "The first Paradise Valley was in 1624, a pilgrim settlement. They all drank the tea, believing it would protect them from..." The file burst into flames in her hands. Above us, the compound's bells began to ring. The sound carried screams from every harvest, every congregation that had ever raised those red cups to their lips. The quarantine building. Marcus wiped blood from his chin. It's not just for us, is it? No. Elder Gregory's face aged decades between words. It connects them all, every compound, every hell, a door between prisons. The ceiling cracked. Through the fissures, I saw the truth. Paradise Valley stretched above us, but not our version. Hundreds of identical compounds layered on top of each other, each one filled with its own congregation, each one feeding the same hunger. Ruth's flashlight caught something in the corner. A mirror stood against the wall, its surface rippling like water. My reflection showed the truth. 847 days of decay hidden beneath false flesh. He's not just Prophet Daniel. Elder Gregory's shadow began to cry. He's every Prophet Daniel, every savior, every false god feeding on desperate faith. The bunker walls dissolved. We stood in a vast chamber of bone and sinew. Above us, the compounds merged together, their walls melting like wax. The congregations moved in perfect unison, their shadows feeding something vast and ancient. Prophet Daniel's laugh echoed from everywhere at once. His form appeared at the top of the stairs, but wrong. His skin split along invisible seams as other versions of himself flowed into one body. Row after row of teeth gleamed as his mouth opened wider than any human jaw could stretch. My children. His voice carried the weight of centuries. It's time for communion. The truth hit me like a physical blow. We weren't just trapped in hell. We were being digested, our desperate faith breaking down into something this ancient thing could consume. 847 days of denial had just been preparation. Now it was time for the real feast to begin. The white walls of Paradise Valley melted like candle wax. Underneath, architecture of bone and sinew pulsed with ancient life. The immaculate gardens withered, revealing fields of twisted metal and red plastic cups stretching into infinity. Each cup still stained with centuries of tea, each rim marked with the lip prints of souls who died believing in salvation. Through the chapel windows, the true believers knelt in the ruins. Their prayers degraded into sounds no human throat should make as their minds shattered. In the courtyard, the knowing deniers streamed toward quarantine in perfect rows. They'll forget everything. Ruth clutched Marcus close as the sky ripped apart. Start the cycle again. Through the tears in reality, other versions of Paradise Valley stretched in every direction. Each compound pulsed with its own congregation, each one at its own stage of ripeness, each one feeding the vast thing our Prophet Daniel had become. Elder Gregory's shadow spread across the ground, merging with an ocean of other shadows. The darkness spoke with his voice. I watched every harvest, every compound, every moment of 847 days, repeated forever. The mountains surrounding our valley shed their disguise. Not mountains at all, the fossilized remains of previous congregations. Millions of bodies frozen in eternal prayer, their faces forever twisted in the moment of revelation. Sister Mary emerged from quarantine's depths, but wrong. Her body rippled with new angles, new geometries. Brother James followed, his form melded into the architecture of our prison. A procession of the changed emerged, all those who chose to forget, transformed into building blocks of hell. The thing wearing Prophet Daniel's skin grew larger, absorbing its other selves from countless compounds. Its true form towered above us, a vast, ancient entity that fed on humanity's desperate need for salvation. Our 847 days of denial had nourished it well. Through cracks in reality, I watched our story play out in the living world. News reports about our mass suicide, police photographs of 300 bodies arranged in perfect rows, red cups still clutched in lifeless hands, comment sections filled with mockery and disbelief. But as Paradise Valley crumbled around us, I saw something else. Another congregation, gathering in another compound. Another Prophet Daniel, wearing a different face but the same ancient hunger. Another set of red cups being filled with sweet almond tea. "They can't see it," Ruth said. "Even with our story right there as a warning, they can't see." The entity's laughter shook the foundations of hell. Our tale of damnation played out again and again in the living world, but it wasn't a cautionary tale at all. It was advertisement. Each telling drew more souls to more compounds, to more Prophet Daniels. We thought we'd found freedom in facing the truth, but this was our real punishment, forced to watch for eternity as others followed our path, drinking their tea, believing in salvation, feeding the endless hunger. Our story would repeat forever, a perfect loop of warning and temptation. And somewhere in the living world, red cups were being filled again. Paradise Valley wasn't just our hell, it was a cookbook,